Good day, everyone. Welcome, students. So once again, today we're going to be discussing about Chapter 2 of the Compensation Management, and it will tell us something about the strategy, the totality of decisions. So Chapter 2 will examine the key aspects of decisions taken during the creation of compensation strategy. The key premise is that the way employees are compensated can be a source of sustainable competitive advantage. The three tests to identify if a party or a pay strategy provides competitive advantage are discussed. So what are these? The steps that we are referring to here involve in developing a total compensation strategy are described in the following. Number one, for you to be able to come up with the right strategy is for you to have an assessing conditions. Number two is deciding on the best strategic choices using the pay model. So again, we go back to chapter 1, which is the pay model. So we're talking about the objectives here, the alignment, the competitiveness, the contribution, and the management as a whole. So if I may repeat, there are four of it. The pay model, you're talking about the objectives, alignment, competitiveness, contribution, and management. Okay. Number three is implementing the strategy through the design of the pay system. And number four, reassessing the fit. Okay, the two implementing the strategy through the design of the pay system, the two alternative approaches to developing a compensation strategy are being highlighted. So what are these? Number one is the best fit and the best practices approach. Okay, so there are two different aspects here. Now, when you say best fit, it is coherent to the vision and mission and the demographics of the employee pool. And the best practices approach is the one that is being benchmarked from the other industry. It's a combination of competitors' edge over the industry practices, and and acceptable industry practices is one of the best practices even. Okay, the best fit approach presumes that one size does not fit all. Managing compensation strategically means fitting the compensation system to the business and environmental conditions. In contrast, the best practices approach assumes a universal best way exists. The focus is not on the best compensation strategy, but on how to best implement the system and ultimately fit the compensation system to the business and environmental conditions as a whole. Continuing compensation strategies of three companies. There are similarities and differences in strategies. So in our later we'll be giving out examples as like Google, Medtronic, and Merrill Lynch. So these are the big players in the industry that focuses in different industry practices. These three are compared and contrasted now. So later on, I'll giving out cases as related to these. Although these three companies operate in different industries and vary in terms of the conditions they face, the customers they serve, and the talent they employ, they approach the five dimensions. So what are these? Number one, the objectives, the internal alignment, the external competitive or competitors perhaps, employee contribution, and management. So these are the five dimensions that are being considered, no, in the strategies that they're going to be putting in designing compensation. Okay. Okay, the compensation strategies are okay. Number one is the different strategies within the same industry. So remember, in the telecommunications company, there are, in the Philippine setting, there are three or 3 to 5 big players that are abound. But the one prominent are Smart, Globe, PLDTs, and all of those stuff. So the different strategies within the same industry, sometimes companies operating in the same industry follows different strategies. Example, Google, Microsoft, and SAS, now all compete for software engineers and marketing skills, but they focus on different components of an employee compensation. For example, Google provides a less base pay but focuses on providing stock options to employees. And then Microsoft had followed a similar strategy, but due to the lackluster performance of its stock, it has increased its base pay and modified its stock-related compensation. And then what about the other one, the SAS? It emphasizes work-life programs over cash compensation and provides limited bonuses and no stock rewards or awards. Number 2 is different strategies within the same company. So how does it goes? Business units of large corporation face different competitive conditions, adopt different business strategies, and thus fit different compensation strategies. For example, United Technologies, which has various business units, like Otis Elevator, Pratt and Whitney aircraft engines, Sikorsky aircraft, and Carrier air conditioners, uses different compensation strategies. A simple, let the market decide our compensation. No, so that's another one. No, it's a strategy does not really work, no, either in the US or internationally, some other companies, no. So definitely let the market decide our compensation does not actually embrace the industry practices of how you compensate the design of your company. So emerging labor markets in some developing countries and highly regulated labor market in some developed countries are responsible for lesser movement of people than is common in the US, Canada, parts of Korea, and Singapore. Okay, so next is the strategic perspective on compensation is more complex than it appears. Now we go to strategic choices. Strategy refers to the fundamental directions that an organization chooses. An organization defines its strategy through the trade-offs it makes in and chooses chooses what and what not to do. The strategic choices at the corporate level. The fundamental strategic choice is what business should we be in? At the business unit level, the choice shifts to how do we gain and sustain competitive advantage in this business? At the function level, the strategic choices is how should total compensation help this business gain and sustain competitive advantage? Okay, so letter C is the ultimate purpose. So what is to gain, no? And sustain competitive advantage. Okay, so based on the definition, a strategic perspective focuses on those compensation choices that help and the organization gain and sustain competitive advantage. Now, the support business strategy, so we discussed about it, and the support business strategy, a currently popular theory, proposes that pay systems should be aligned with the organization's business strategy. The rationale is based on the contingency notion. Okay, when you say contingency notions, these are the differences in a firm strategy should be supported by corresponding differences in the human resource strategy, including compensation. And the other one, the underlying premise is the greater the alignment or fit between an organization strategy and the compensation system, the more effective the organization is. Okay, tailoring the compensation system to the strategy. How do you fit it? No? How do you tailor them? So, number one, the compensation system might be tailored in three categories. Ano? So, number one would be innovator strategy. Okay, innovator strategy. No? Innovator strategy stresses new products, new response time to market trends. Compensation approach places less emphasis on evaluating skills and jobs and more emphasis on incentives designed to encourage innovation. So that's number one, as an innovator. Number two, cost cutter. Strategy focuses on efficiency, no? Cost cutter. Efficiency, no? Cost cutter. Yeah, that's it, no? Doing more with less and minimizing cost, no? So more output in a minimized cost, no? At that. So the compensation strategy in a cost cutter emphasizes productivity increase and specifies work specification in great detail. Now, number three is the customer focused strategy. So when you say small, the customer focused strategy, it stresses in delighting customers. Pay strategy focuses on customer satisfaction incentives. Could be a lot of things, no? Like commissions or overriding, so all of those stuff, no? So these are the things that when customer focused strategy are being engaged. Compensation strategies can also be based on genetic or generic strategy framework. Michael Porter's business strategy framework includes cost leadership strategy. It focuses in reducing cost, no, on its operation. And number two, under Michael Porter's business strategy, is the differentiator strategy. So it focuses on providing innovative product at premium prices. Okay? So premium prices for an innovative product. Now, number two, compensation strategy is Miles and Snow's framework. So number one is Michael Porter, which concentrates on cost leadership strategy and differentiator, no? So strategy. Now, in number two, it's Miles and Snow framework. No? It includes defenders. Defenders is companies that operate in stable market and compete on cost. Okay. Number two, under Miles and Snow framework, is the prospectors. It companies that focus on innovation and new market. Number three, conventional wisdom says that companies which compete on cost leadership strategy, or defenders, tend to be successful with low compensation. On the other hand, companies which compete on innovation, differentiator strategy, or prospectors, tend to use pay for performance and focus on incentive-based pay. Number four, exceptions to this thumb rule are many. Examples, the Southwest Airlines in the US, SAS. So these are the exceptions to the thumb of the rule. No? Okay, so one tend to fit, no, like Google as an innovator, Merrill Lynch as customer focus, and Medtronic as both innovator and customer focus. Okay. However, these employees of employees of these three companies says that they are unique blend of the three strategies. So we're talking about Medtronic here. Okay. Another good contention is that when an organization's business strategy changes, the pay system should change also. Now, for example, one very good example is IBM. For several years, IBM emphasized internal alignment. For example, the elaborate job evaluation, the clear hierarchy for decision making, the work-life balance benefits, and a policy of no layoffs. So these are, IBM is noted for. And then another one is to combat IBM. I would like to emphasize this strategy is to combat the lack of flexibility to adapt competitive changes in the new century. IBM now concentrates on diversified and advanced information technology, including hardware, software, services, and research. Now, to fit the revised strategy for IBM streamlined the organization by taking the following action in the recent years of their operation. So, number one is the cutting layers of management. So, they have to more or less come up with an idea wherein, they have to streamline for the cost measure, cost cutting measures, they have to cut layers of management. Then at the same time, providing a lesser red tape now for the organization's efficiency and decision making. And then next is redesigning jobs to incorporate more flexibility. So it's a very good innovation in terms of you are not only focused on concentrating on a particular job this time, but apparently you are being trained to do other things, no? Okay, so redesigning jobs to incorporate more flexibility. Another one, IBM, is increasing incentive pay, to more strongly differentiate on performance. So they come up with a lot of, benefits and incentives, for them to be able to lure and motivate their people around, and then focuses more on the performance. And then observing and monitoring costs constantly. Remember that a lot of capitalization for every industry is geared towards containing the cost, and it reflects mostly mostly in a fixed cost like the salaries and wages. Okay, now what is the IBM strategy principles and priorities in strategy execution? If the basic premise of a strategic choice is to align the pay system to the business strategy, then different business strategies will translate into different compensation approaches. No? Okay, so there, so that's the premise. Now, the support of human relations or HR strategy. Although a compensation strategy that supports the business strategy implies that it is aligned with HR strategy as well, this topic requires an in-depth detail. So number one, researchers like Boxall and Purcell have found a commonly used performance theory in the literature of high-performance work system. Okay? And then the other one, the theory states that performance is a function of three factors: the ability, the motivation, and the opportunity. Okay, the key premise is that compensation is the key to attracting, retaining, and motivating employees with the abilities necessary to execute the business strategy and handle greater decision-making responsibilities. Now, compensation is also the key to handle motivating system to fully utilize those abilities. Okay, example is the SAS, which licenses its software as it plans to build long-term customer relationship by getting or retaining continual feedback on each product and services. Why is this so? No, it is for them to support the this orientation of having to know the performance of the product in the market. And then SAS is very selective in hiring and emphasizes on pay for team performance rather than the individual performance. Okay, so it's more cohesive and working on together as a team, and then more ideas, creative ideas are imputing in a particular concept. Okay, so that's the very essence of it. Now, okay, the alignment between compensation strategy and the HR strategy, the AMO, and fit are central to successful business strategy execution, which in turn influences the revenues and cost of the company. All of these factors are critical to increasing the effectiveness of the company through increased customer satisfaction and competitive advantage and stakeholder as a whole in their satisfaction. What are the pay model guides strategic pay decisions? So when decisions regarding the 5 strategic compensation choices of the pay model are taken together, it forms a pattern and the base for an organization's compensation strategy. For example, compensation system of Whole Foods. Okay, so first we determine the objectives of a company like Whole Foods. The objectives. Now, how should compensation support the business strategy and adaptive to the cultural and regulatory pressures in a global environment? Yeah, Whole Food is an example of an international, well acceptable international company. Now, second is the internal alignment. How differently should the different types and levels of skills and work be paid within the organization? So these are to be taken consideration also. And then next is the external competitiveness of Whole Food. How should total compensation be positioned against competitors? Remember that your aim and one of your objectives is for you to retain good employees. So there, the external competitiveness should also be taken consideration of. Now, upon further assessment, we also consider the employee contribution. Should pay increases be based on individual or team performance, on experience, or on continuous learning? So therefore, enhancing yourself to the knowledge of how to operate and improve your business, and then improving skills, the changes of cost of living allowance or living rather, on personal needs, or on each business unit's performance even. So these are the bases. Now, last would be the management. How open and transparent should the pay decisions be to all the employees of the company? Who should be involved in designing this whole system? Okay. Now, stated versus unstated strategies. So these are implied, and unimplied, or rather, So stated versus the unstated, strategies of how to plan a compensation package, that are fit, to the company's objectives. So number one, all organizations that pay people have a compensation strategy. So this is very much basic, Organization that pay people should have a compensation strategy. Number two, some organizations have a written compensation strategy that is shared with all the employees. Remember, shared with all the employees. Number three, the compensation strategy of other organization emerges from the pay decisions they make. So they plan, and then they strongly hold. And then unstated compensation strategy is inferred from the compensation practices. Okay, inferred, remember, from the compensation practices. That is unstated compensation. And then, number 4 is the managers in all organizations should make the 5 strategic decisions to be discussed. No, later on we'll be focusing more on that. No, but what we are talking about, referring here, is that managers in organization should make the 5 strategic decisions. Some do it in a rational or deliberate ways, no, but while others do it more chaotically. No? So why chaotically? Because they're not sure. They're not equipped with a lot of research and foundation on how to create one, the best element and fitted to the company's directions. No? So there. Now, we go to the 4th step in developing a total compensation strategy. The 4th step. Steps in formulating the total compensation strategy. While the following steps are simple, but very simple in terms of concept, no. But then apparently in the execution, there goes the problem. Right? It's more complex than what we are thinking of. There's a trial and error experience even, and the insights play major roles. No? So yeah. So, but then apparently, you can counter that by thorough research, processes. So okay, so we now exhibit the 4 process. No, so the key step in formulating a total compensation strategy. Key steps. So number 1 step is assess the total compensation implications. Assess total compensation implications. Now, given that, so business strategy and competitive dynamics should understand the business strategy and competitive dynamics by understanding the business. So what does it mean? An organization needs to understand the specific industry in which it operates and how it plans to compete with the same industry. Now, key factors to analyze include changes in customer needs, competitors' action, changing labor market conditions, changing laws, and definitely globalization. So therefore, these are the key factors for you to be able to analyze and include it. Next is assess both the current status of the key factors as well as the potential future changes in the future. The changes in the future of these factors. And then after analyzing the impact of changes to the organization strategy, determine the compensation system should change to support the strategy. And then analysis of the global environment is vital. It is complex, especially when comparing pay systems. McDonald's in the US, McDonald's in India, McDonald's in the Philippines, in Japan, and some other countries has different strategic pay designs and system. Okay. Okay. So after analyzing, the impact to the strategy, determine the compensation should change to support. Now, and then pay can act as supporting player or a catalyst for change. If embedded well, in the system and the total human relations or HR approach. Number 2, culture and values. A pay system that reflects the values that guide an employer's behavior and underline its treatment of its employees. A pay system does mirror a company's image and reputation, so basing on the culture and values of the organization. For example, the Medtronic values. So later on, I'm going to give you some details about it. Now, The social and political context is another one. So when you say social and political context, we first define what context is all about. Now, context refers to a wide range of factors. So what are these? The legal and regulatory requirements, the cultural differences, changing workforce demographics, and employee expectations. So this also affects the compensation choices. No? Now, because the government are major stakeholders in determining compensation, lobbying to influence laws and regulations can also be a part of a compensation strategy. So you can lobby, any changes, any, infuse of new ideas, strategies can be lobbied, despite the restrictions in the labor and regulatory of the government. So from a strategic perspective, compensation managers shape the socio-political environment as well as we shape it, no? So there. Okay, number 4 is the employee preferences. Employee preferences, the employees have different needs and wants from a pay system. So others wanted it bigger, higher, and others just be contented with that kind of level. But so employees have different needs and wants, from the pay system. And then a major challenge in the design of next generation pay system is how to better satisfy individual needs and preferences. By offering more choice is one approach. Okay? And then number 5, choice is good. No, yes, no, or maybe. No, so these are choices. Choice is good, as part of the strategy given. Now, what is this? Contemporary pay system, especially in the United States, do offer some choices, including flexible benefits and choices among healthcare plans, which apparently does not actually being practiced regularly here in the Philippines. But some other companies are actually instituting or beginning to understand that this can be also offered. The contemporary pay system. Some studies have found that people who do not always choose well, they do not always understand the alternatives. And too many choices simply confuse them even. So they better be, the simpler the pay system is, they're more adaptable into it. Now, another one, when there's choice is good, but there's a yes, no, or maybe concept, is that uh, in addition to possibly confusing employees, unlimited choice would be a challenge to design and manage. So you can, bring out a lot of choices even. And then unlimited choice may also meet with disapproval, from the governing body. In our case, it's the government in itself, labor government institutions, BIR. So these are the things that are to be considered. Now, another strategy is for you to be able to confer with the union preferences. No, so some companies actually are we make consultation on that. So the union preferences are the pay strategies need to be adapted to the nature of the union management relationship. So we see a lot of those cases are happening here in the Philippines. So dispute legal battles are abound, in some other industries in the Philippines. Although union membership among private sector workers is less than about 10 million in the US. So more or less adapting it to here, we can, I cannot categorically say that's about 10% also. Unions actually do influence pay decisions. So normally it's still the management who prevails in the decision process. In the union preferences, what you would like to see also is the union's interest can differ. It can, there are lots of things that can be not similar to the focuses of the organization. So they differ. Okay, compensation deals with unions can be costly even to change. So we see in the previous news items, in the Philippine setting, that a change for about 5 peso, 10 peso increase across the board would dent, no, the capitalization of the industry even. So it's it's really hard, no. Okay. Now we go to the chapter 2. I'm sorry, the step 2. No, the step 2, it's a map a total change compensation strategy. Total compensation strategy. A compensation strategy is formulated based on the 5 decisions outlined in the pay model that we have discussed. I will repeat, it's the objectives, the alignment, competitiveness, contributions, and management. So all actually factors are being considered here. And then next is the mapping is often used in marketing to clarify and communicate a product identity. 3 is the strategic maps offer a picture of the company's compensation strategy and can be used to clarify the message a company is trying to deliver and its compensation system. Okay, contrasting maps to Microsoft and SAS as a company. So we now try to compare. No? So in Microsoft, main message is or pay brand, as we call it, pay brand. It's a total compensation is prominent with a strong emphasis on market competitiveness. So individual accomplishment and performance-based pay strategy is being engaged. Microsoft. Okay? And now with the SAS, the main message is pay brand also. No? So meaning total compensation supports its work-life balance, competitive market position, company-wide success sharing, and egalitarian are the hallmarks of SAS. Okay, maps do not tell which strategy is best. No? Rather, they provide framework and guidance. No? Yeah, it's up to you. No? So based on the objectives and the direction of the company. But we cannot say that's the best fit for every industry. And the remainder of the text discusses the 5 decision in detail. It's the totality of the decision that forms the compensation strategy. Okay. Next, steps 3 and 4. Now we combine all together. Implement and reassess. Okay. Step 3 involves implementing the strategy through the design and execution of the compensation system. Okay, involving the implementation of the strategy is step number 3. Now, step 4 focuses on reassessing and realigning as conditions and strategy changes. So it's adapting, even. So it closes the loop. Thus, periodic reassessment is needed to continuously learn, adapt, and improve the system. Okay? Okay, as we go along, so a source of competitive advantage. So there are 3 tests. The 3 tests. But later, I'm going to be discussing it as part of your discussion and assessment as we go along. Now, there. Okay, I guess the previews or the chapter will tell us a better understanding about how we make decision, how the totality of the decisions of how we plan and how we adapt to the strategy of a company into coming up with a better and fitted strategy compensation plan. Okay, so after examining the key aspects of the decisions based on the chapter 1 strategies, remember, so we now dig in somehow into some of the concept of how chapter 2 develops into the decision making process. So later class, I'm going to give you some assessments and some work in our discussion as we discuss further about our chapter. So for now, I want to close the chapter 2 discussion in my presentation, and I hope I have given you some ideas about the totality of decision strategy on chapter 2. So okay, see you again, and we'll discuss further. Thank you. Have a good day.